Welcome back to Web3 DJs. I am Hofstra with my co-host Sticky Finger Jones, and we have an incredible guest today from the new Kumite NFT project, Mr. Gareb Shamus. I'm going to give you guys a quick little background here. So Gareb Shamus is a serial entrepreneur, visionary, and cultural catalyst who has influenced over 1 billion people through his businesses, communities, and relationships in the superhero and character franchise worlds. Go on this website. Can I share my screen real quick?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
You can pull up his bio right here that I'm reading on HeroMaker Studios. But Gareb, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing? How's your Sunday going?
Doing great. Any chance I get to talk about superheroes and NFTs and Web3, I'll be there.
Absolutely. You know, we're blessed to have you here with us today. And, you know, that's right up our alley as well. So I think a great way to kind of get our show started would be to tell our audience a little bit about your background. You know, where are you from? Where'd you grow up? And what was your background outside of Web3?
So I was very lucky. I grew up with 3 brothers and collected sports cards and comic books as a kid. And it became such a big family business that by the time I was early teen, my mom opened up a comic book and sports card shop. And I mean, so to have that in the family was like literally like having a candy store in the family.
Yeah.
And it was just the most fun you could possibly have as a kid, where like literally every night at the dinner table, we'd be talking about, you know, what cards, what comics, what's going on. And then when I graduated college, I couldn't get a job. So I worked at the store and I started a newsletter about comic books. And, you know, this was 1990, 1991. And it worked out so that we started selling so many comics that I was turning it into Wizard magazine, which was incredible. And it was around the time when all the image guys left Marvel. So the magazine just took off. It was all pre-internet. There was nowhere to find out what was going on except through Wizard. So for decades, that magazine had really become the Bible of what was going on, not just in the comic books, but in superheroes. And then by the mid-1990s, I decided to throw a little party for the magazine and called it Comic-Con. And 20,000 people showed up. So it was this incredible moment because back then being a geek or a nerd was not fun. So so we had this big party. And I think that's really what galvanized, you know, the whole kind of geek and nerd movement. And then cut to, you know, today, my brother and I produced 180 Comic-Cons and, you know, created... probably sold over 5 million tickets, but more importantly, have had just a tremendous impact on fan culture, not just in the superhero world, but I think how every brand or company, you know, works and deals and engages with their fans. And so it's just been an incredible, you know, kind of life ride here.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a bit of a comic nerd myself. You know, it is a newer passion for me, and as a matter of fact, it's kind of just been sparked since I dived into the Web3 space. Do you have a favorite comic book character?
Yeah, for me, it was always Spider-Man. So it's great that you got into it. Yeah, I have so many similarities. First of all, I was born in Queens. You know, physically, I'm that same size. You know, people think that you need to have this big hulking exterior to be a superhero, but Spider-Man is not physically that type of character. And also, you know, luckily, you know, since you know, my magazine and the Comic-Cons did so well when I was younger, it was also having this kind of greater responsibility out there. And then also I was very close with Stan Lee. He was literally like a godfather to me. So to hear him, you know, talk about Spider-Man and how it was created and everything about the essence of that character, it just really resonated with me since day one.
So how did you come up with the name Kumite, and what was the foundation for that? I met your partner at NFT NYC, Scott, I believe his name is. Scott Donnell. You guys were there, and I kind of got a brief background, but maybe you could explain to us how this whole thing got started.
Yeah, so Scott and I co-founded HeroMaker Studios with the intent of changing the way superheroes and fan cultures are interacted in a whole new way in the world of Web3. You know, there's so many different opportunities here, you know, that haven't been available or possible in the past. And with NFT and Web3 technology, we've been able to do that. So Scott and I started the company and really started doing what's called world building, where basically created this incredible HeroMaker world. Like what is like, I wrote this 100-page Bible on what's going on in the world. And then through that created over 30 different franchises as to how all these character franchises exist in that world. And the first one that we came out with is called Kumite. And it's all about this epic battle between heroes and villains. And I kind of got some inspiration from, you know, there was a movie called Bloodsport by Jean-Claude Van, with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Came out in the late 80s. And that to me was like this definitive fight film back in the day, where it was the Kumite, this kind of quiet, you know, secretive tournament where good and evil fought each other. So to me, I kind of got inspiration from that. And the fight tournament in the movie Bloodsport was called Kumite. And then also I have a background in mixed martial arts. I was a big fight promoter in that space for many years, produced hundreds of live fights. So, you know, kind of having this whole background in the fight world, and in the superhero world, kind of mixing it all together, you know, was able to create this epic franchise called Kumite.
Well, you're in the right place. I don't know if you see right behind me, I got plenty of signed fight posters, and I probably have 10,000 MMA trading cards right next to me right here.
Oh, cool. So. Yeah. Do you remember the IFL, the International Fight League?
Absolutely. I had friends that fought in it.
Yeah, so I started that. And so I started that back in the early 2000s. And we were the first ones to do deals with Fox Sports. So it was in 100 million homes, free television. I had my fight license in about 14 states, and I had over 100 fighters under contract, but not only worked with the superheroes in the comic book world, but also got a chance to work with the icons of that space, the Renzo Gracie, Frank and Ken Shamrock, Bas Rutten, Pat Miletich. I mean, the name goes on and on of like these extraordinary people that I had a chance to work with.
That's amazing. Yeah, like Hofstra said, we're huge MMA fans. Do you still keep up with the sport at all?
As you can imagine.
Yeah, so do you still watch it? Did you check out the pay-per-view last night or anything like that?
I didn't watch the pay-per-view last night, but I'm still a huge fan. I watch most of the fights. I still have a lot of friends in the sport, and you know, I think I have a pretty good like critical eye for like how it's evolving and what's going on in that world. So, you know, I definitely have, you know, still kind of, I wouldn't say a whole foot in the door, but I definitely have, you know, a lot of excitement and interest for what's going on in that sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you have, like you mentioned earlier, launched Wizard Magazine. You grew up working in your family comic book store, and you did that right out of college. You launched Comic-Con, and now you've taken a step into the Web3 space. Oh, and again, the IFL, like you just mentioned. What are kind of like the parallels between all of those different opportunities that you've come up with?
There's a couple. One of them is the birth of worlds and industries. So when you look at, you know, where I've been in the world, it's always at the most core beginning of how these things get started. You know, this was at the time when the UFC was really just kind of getting their feet wet again back in the real world, back in the early 2000s when I got started. It wasn't a business, it was really the UFC. And we really worked very hard on fighter rights and branding and sponsorships and live television and things like that, where even the UFC wasn't doing a lot of that kind of things. But then also when you look at Wizard, it was at the birth of comics into the independent world, you know, outside of Marvel and DC. It was creator rights. Toy Fair was magazine that I started, was at the birth of the independent toy market. You had Inquest Gamer, that was at the start of Magic the Gathering and at the birth of trading card games. So much of my life was about that. And then the second component is what I call the hero's journey. And it's all about being the hero of your world. And everything about what I've done is how do you enable fans to feel like, you know, they're empowered in their world. And that's what, to me, has been so attractive about the Web3 world, is that it's this idea that you have this content, which has been critical to the success of these, you know, big fan franchises and IP out there. The community side, which when I've sold millions of tickets, but reached billions of people and made them feel like they're all part of a community. And then you add it with the collectible side of the nature of the business that I've been in. That is Web3 all rolled into one. And fortunately, I've had a front row seat at all of those tables, and now been able to kind of bring that together in the Web3 world.
Yeah. So you guys actually launched, I believe it was in June, correct?
Yeah, on the worst day of the year in the markets. We woke up on a Thursday morning. The NASDAQ was down 500 points. ETH was way down. It had just collapsed a few days earlier. And so many people called Scott and myself and were like, you got to delay, you got to cut the price, you got to cut the number of NFTs. And we said, no, we're ready to go. We have an incredible community. We have to launch. And we did it. And we sold out the 9,600 collection very quickly. So it was really exciting, including some of the biggest whales in the Web3 NFT space really kind of piled into our project. So it was a real testament to what we were able to do and how we were able to resonate with the fans out there in the NFT world.
Yeah, and we were talking offline just a minute ago about where things are in the space, and people say we're early, but even after this bear market, a lot of people aren't here that were here maybe 6 to 9 months ago, and we were just thinking about how this space is going to get mainstream appeal. I'd love to hear what you think is going to happen in Web3, in NFTs over the next 10, 20 years, because you've seen these other markets and their evolution and how that's worked. What do you think the progression is going to be to get mainstream appeal in NFTs?
Well, there's a couple parts to that. There's more of what I would call like the near term, and then over time it explodes. So because it's absolutely the future of how fans are going to engage and own, what they do, whether it's data or characters or influence or whatever it might be. It's this idea that fans are going to have a much greater participation in the success that they help create. So the near term is right now, the thing that has to happen is brands that have developed things in the NFT space have to start reaching out to people outside the NFT world and bring them in, right? So most of the projects that you see out there, they might do an incredible job. The art is great, but they solely appeal to only the NFT people, and they have no value to anybody outside of the NFT holders. So the first thing that has to happen is to create some emotional connection to fans outside of the NFT space that would be interested in those kind of franchises. And I'm looking at it from the perspective of the character IP world. There's so many other types of NFTs, out there, but strictly from a character IP standpoint, which is what we see a lot of what's available on OpenSea or things like that. And that starts with storytelling, and so many franchises have been able to launch on whether they're incredible mechanics or art or just an interesting, look or feel to them, but they lack in the story. And that's what you need to do to create that emotional connection, because people are in it just to see what the value or the floor price is, and not the story behind it and how you can get engaged in that story. And that's really where I think we differ from most projects, in that we started with the story and we're creating that emotional bond. And we have our comic books coming out, and that's going to be free to everybody all over the world. So here's a chance for people who may not own the NFT to get engaged in the characters and the franchise and the story and how that's going to work. And then the second part is to enable people to participate in that franchise beyond just the core, hey, I own the NFT. And that's really where we're going to excel. And, so many people think that it's about, gaming in the metaverse, and it will be years from now. But so much of it is like, how do you take the earliest aspect of what you do and engage fans in a very unique way that's not just what's it worth, what did you sell it for, how much are you buying it for? And we're starting to see that now in the earliest days of Kumite. So we have the Vortex tournament coming up, which is this big epic tournament to see which is the most powerful family of the 24 families in the world. And it's everything from the angels and demons and Faeries and Goblins and superheroes and Steampunks. So yeah, so that's a graph of the tournament that we have. It's called the Vortex. We actually have the 24 teams that are going to compete against each other. And what's happened now is that we deputized 24 of our fans out there to set up their own Twitter and to engage their community and to say, okay, we're the Goblins. We need all the Goblins to get out there and vote. So there's a lot of kind of, jockeying for position out there, and it's really exciting to see.
Yeah, this is awesome. It says here, like you suggested, 24 families battle for the ultimate prize. You have to tell us, what is this ultimate prize? And then if you wouldn't mind just kind of breaking down a little bit more of how exactly this tournament will work.
Yeah, so for us, sometimes people feel like the prize needs to be physical, but there's this also kind of bragging rights involved in there. So we're going to be publishing this week what the prizes are going to be for the tournament. So we definitely promise people that there's going to be some pretty cool stuff that they win. But more importantly, it's about the bragging rights, because when you win the Vortex, your family is going to be the most powerful, in the tournament, and that's going to have a huge impact in the story and how the story progresses throughout. So it's really, it's not just about this kind of very linear, oh, you just won. It's the comic book starts when the tournament ends. So we're going to make sure that the team that wins gets this featured kind of component of it that's going to be in the storytelling. And when you look at creating value and engagement, these families are really going to be interested in making sure that they win that tournament because they want those bragging rights.
Yeah, so you were talking about releasing a free comic. Can you speak a little bit more about that? How would someone get the comic that's going to be released if you don't own the NFT?
Yeah, so we're going to be making them available free weekly digital downloads. So you're going to be able to go to any one of the most popular digital sites in the world, whether it's Webtoons or Tapas or Comixology or YouTube, wherever anybody wants to be able to read or consume these comics, we're going to enable people to do that. And, our goal is to get to over 1 million people in the first 6 months that we're going to want to engage and read the comics and build a massive audience. So when you have, thousands of NFT holders and millions of people that are interested in their franchise, that's going to create an enormous, interest in the NFTs and in the world that you're building. And those people are going to want to, as people, migrate to becoming, from casual fans to more deep fan and building that relationship, they're going to want to own the NFT. They're going to want to vote in the tournaments. They're going to want to participate in ways that you can't just being more of a casual fan and reader. And that's the journey, that we want to bring people on, which is to create this massive funnel for people to be able to get engaged and to build this connection between, fans and the stories and the characters in there. And I don't need to, go any further than when you look at what's happened in the film and television world. The biggest franchises in the world have been these, films and TV shows based on comic books and superhero characters. So, it's already been a proven fact that that's the way to go about doing it. And now we're going to be doing that in a really kind of compelling way.
That's outstanding. And I want to hit on that for just a second. So you decided, even though you come from the traditional kind of physical comic book space, that you're going to be launching these digitally. A lot of NFTs and Web3 are just oriented around the fact that this new digital collectible craze, if you will. Talk to us a little bit about how you feel about digital collectibles, how they play in with the physical space. Do you think digital collectibles are the future? Advantages, disadvantages? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I actually do think that there's a place for digital collectibles. And I think a lot of people kind of dove into that, thinking that everything as an NFT is going to be worth something. And the reality is that 99% of the 0.9% of the physical things that people collect are worthless also. So,
Right.
The thing that works is when you have a project that has a longevity to it. When you look at anything that has value over time as a collectible, they will have had to stand the test of time. And to just do things because, oh, it's a limited blah, 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 it just won't work. It might have this ephemeral value now, but over time, those disappear. The other thing about it too is, at least from my perspective, is the digital collectibles don't fully leverage the value of what Web3 brings to that. So even though, to me, it doesn't need to be an NFT to necessarily be a digital collectible. Whereas in Web3, you need the NFT, you need that smart contract behind it in order for it to, create this kind of value over time. So to me there's no question there's a place, and a very, very rock solid place for NFT and digital collectibles in the future. But to me, they don't really leverage Web3 in a way that fans actually have rights and things that are associated with it beyond just what you would normally get through a physical item.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. We occasionally have some guests on here, and we try, get their take on what they feel Web3 is. I would be interested to hear your definition of Web3.
So to me, I always try to put it in the simplest terms, especially because I speak to so many people not from the Web3 world, and they need to understand it. And basically, I just say, like, Web 1 is read, Web 2 is read write, and Web 3 is read write own. And that to me is the core philosophy of everything about Web 3 is like when Scott and I are working on the company, every part of our thought process is how do we develop something that the fan feels like they own, that they can control, that's theirs, that's part of them. And that's what we think about. Like almost everything. It's not what are we doing for ourselves, it's what are we doing for our fans, that they could benefit from the engagement and from the ownership perspective of what we do. And the more we think about that, the more value we're also creating for ourselves, and the more invested people are going to be in dedicating their excitement and their interest into doing things, alongside us. So the more a fan feels like they can create their own stories, which would create their own value for the NFT that they own, the more engagement is going to create a lot of value. So they're going to do that. There's a lot of projects that you see out there, where the engagement doesn't create value. I mean, it might create value for the NFT, but again, it's ephemeral. It's based on the IP owner doing something. They need to be the ones that have to create the movie or the TV show, not what the fans can do. And in our case, so much about it is how do we enable the fans to take possession of what they want to do with the characters and the franchises outside of what we do. I mean, we're going to do our own thing too, but we want to encourage people to keep doing something on their own. Marvel is never going to let you own Spider-Man or own a piece of it. You might get a digital collectible of Spider-Man, but you're never going to have a piece of the underlying rights. You're never going to be able to create products based on a character that you then own, or even if you have derivative rights to in their world. And that to me is, the difference between where this is start and where this stops. You have so many of the biggest franchises in the world out there, and they're going to do a lot in the digital collectible space and in the gaming space, and you're going to own NFTs that could be worth something, but you still will never participate in the franchise side of it.
Absolutely. I think that makes a ton of sense. And you're really hitting on some topics that people don't really like to bring up, So I can tell just from our conversation today and based on my research on the project that despite the fact Kumite is relatively new, you in the project have really been community oriented from the start. As a matter of fact, we have several people in your community shouting you out in the chat and things like that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit about the role that your community has played to this point and, their role in the project?
Our community is everything. In every aspect of everything I've ever done in my life, it's always been fan first. And it's always been how do we engage people and also give them the respect. So many franchises they disrespect their fans, or they belittle their interest or their involvement. They're only there to make money off of them, and they're just not there to support them. My entire life, all these big media companies have been working with me to help engage their fans. I can't tell you how many big franchises I've seen, they sue their fans. It's like, the minute they cross over the line of doing things, they sue them. And it's like, these are your biggest fans out there. These are your biggest advocates. And now you're suing them for doing something more love for your franchise. And it's like, to me, it's like, that's crazy. We want to do the opposite. How do we give people the, not only not sue them, but encourage them to do things and do things that we wouldn't do? And that, to me, is the most exciting part of what we do, which is, we can't think of everything, but 10, 15, 50, 100, a million people can think of everything. And that's, to me, is what the most exciting part of where we're going with this, which is unleashing this extraordinary energy and talent pool and ideas and thoughts that we've never come up with, and turning that over to the fans to be able to engage in ways that they've never been able to do with somebody else's character franchises.
So what do you think, in your experience of starting HeroMaker Studios and this NFT project, is the main difference between like a traditional business that you've started versus this? Is it relatively the same, or are there some new challenges because of, this being new that you've seen and had to overcome?
So at the core of it, every business has, like many things that are the same, right? You still need incredible people. You need still great ideas. You still have to develop. You still have to be creative. You still have to, have a structure where you could pay people, right? Like there's still, like, no matter what business you're going to be in, you still have that. Where this is very, very different is that there's this underlying technology, and especially something called the smart contract, that underlies everything that you do. So from that standpoint, you have like a finality to some of the programming that you're doing. Whereas a lot of technology businesses, you can iterate and build over time. The smart contract is a final product. So there's a limited amount that you could do with that. And that's going to change over time. So you got to really think about everything that you're doing as much ahead of time as possible, and build that in. So from that standpoint, there's that aspect of it. The second thing about it is to think in terms of, this multi-dimension as opposed to very linear, right? Because, when you're doing movies, it's a very linear storytelling. We're going to create something for fans. They're going to watch it. And then that's the experience. Even gaming, you're immersed in a world, but there's still barriers to what that world, what you can and can't do. Like no matter what video game you play, you still can't go outside the guidelines of what they've created.
Right.
This is something where there is no guidelines, there is no barrier to and guidelines, and there's no fence as to what can or can't be done, and that in itself creates the fun part to me is the idea that you don't know where it's going to go, and that's very scary to a lot of people, and not only is it not scary, it's actually exciting for us.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say as well. What scares others definitely excites us. And one thing that I wanted to hit on that you brought up is in your previous ventures and in your experience in Web3, it really seems like the people play the most pivotal role. Your team, the ones that you surround yourself with to help build out whatever the opportunity that you're facing. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the Kumite team?
So we have a whole bunch of people that are on our team. We have everybody from me and Scott. Obviously, Scott's got a huge background in the consumer business. We've got Anwar on our team, who is our CTO. Just an amazing guy. Worked in the he was a MIT Media Lab guy, hackathon, many hackathon winners. And Nelson Diaz is on an advisory and a great friend. And we have so many more people on our team. We have this woman Lorelei, who's our head of operations. She came from running comic book companies. We have a guy named John Nee, who was the global head of publishing for Marvel and was a very senior executive at Marvel and DC for many years. So, so he literally, helped build, DC's business around the world and Marvel's business around the world. So, in almost every facet of what we're doing, we have friends. And then we also have, some investors in our company, that are some of the most incredible people out there. Gabby Dizon, who's the CEO and founder of YGG. So Yield Guild Games from the gaming side. David Waslin, who's the founder and CEO of Wilder World. So, we have, some incredible people that are just, not only, investors and advisors for us, but we have a lot of incredible friends, in the space, that we could draw upon for inspiration and help.
Yeah, sounds like a pretty core dream team of people to have on your side. One of the most, I would say, difficult things to figure out for NFTs, at least for me, is how do they continue to generate revenue? So you have this initial launch, right? And then you've got your secondary sales, but right now everything's slow. How are you guys thinking about the monetization of your project long term? Do you see it just being secondary sales, or are there other creative ways that you guys are coming up with on how to generate other lines of revenue?
Yeah, so the thing is that most franchises, because they're collector based, and their value is based on scarcity and mechanical ways, their interest is always to decrease the supply of NFTs to increase the value, right. So that's kind of their value play, is that the less there are, the more value it creates out there. Sure. We have a different kind of philosophy, which is, when you have millions and millions of people out there that love your franchise, there's a capacity to create more NFTs, but they have to be different, and they can't just, dilute the primary collection. They need to be additive, and they have to be, ways in which new people can come in and not take away from the original, but add to it. And their mere existence of new NFT holders actually make the original holders even more valuable. So when you look at the way collectibles are created, right? Magic the Gathering didn't say, oh, in order to maintain the value of all of our cards, we're not going to make any more, right? They did the opposite. They keep coming out with new sets that came out with new cards, new mechanics, new things that drove the value of the original, right? So, and it's virtually the same everywhere you go. When you look at sports cards, they didn't just say, oh, LeBron had his rookie cards, and now we're not going to make any more because we want to maintain the scarcity of the rookie cards. It's like, no, every season they come out with new LeBron cards, but they've come out with new ways of doing a LeBron card, right? You can do, Logo Man, exquisite cards, right? Like there's so many different ways that you can, create new products that bring in new people that actually drive the value of the original. And that's really a lot about how we're thinking about what we're doing. We can continually add new Kumite NFTs to the Kumite families and new families, that don't dilute the existing families, but actually create more value for them, because it enables more people to come into the space that will drive, excitement, interest. And when you look at, 10, 20 years down the road, especially because of things being on the blockchain, you'll be able to see the provenance of some of the earliest of NFTs and how many tournaments they won and how they've been able to upgrade their characteristics and the weapons that they've achieved. And right. So when you start looking at the provenance of the original ones versus the new ones, all of a sudden there's going to be a lot of value creation in the oldest ones, because you've created so many new ones that will create the interest in the old ones.
Yeah, that's a really good take.
For sure.
That was kind of opened my eyes a little bit, because I've been wondering the same thing. So do you think that's going to be more on the digital collectible side, or is there going to be a split, like 50% is going to be IRL, actual real comic books, or are you focused more on, that revenue just being NFTs and digital?
No, we're going to have lots of like IRL type collectibles that we're going to do. But, in order to do that, you want to pull from a large base of people, that have interest and excitement in terms of what they're doing. So that's why for us, like doing the digital comic books is great, because it's gonna build a much wider audience for us, so that as we start doing more in real life, or more what I would call physical collectibles, you're going to have a lot more people interested in that. And then obviously the more physical collectibles you do and the more value you create in that world, the more people are going to have an interest in the NFTs. So we're gonna be able to play both worlds really well, and we're going to be able to play both worlds in a way where they work very well together. I don't think of them as separate, as being very separate, right? So like, there are physical collectibles that we're working on right now, we're going to be announcing soon, that there'll be a component of it that's only available to the NFT holders.
Okay.
Right? So, that physical collectible might be worth more than the NFT. You might want to buy an NFT just so you can get the physical collectible, right? There's so many different ways to kind of work the value between both that I think people haven't seen yet. And because I've been able to, have a huge kind of background in the physical collectible space, we're going to be able to create mechanics that interact in a way that people have not seen before. And we're just going to be on the forefront of all of that. We've definitely, we definitely got started like a year later than the Bored Apes and the others out there. But it's not. But over time, those gaps are going to close really, really fast for us in terms of how quickly people are going to see that we're on the forefront of innovation and what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love how you talked about the way that these mechanics that you're going to be building out will interact with each other in ways that the Web3 space hasn't seen yet. One of my favorite things about doing this show is no matter what project we have on, they're doing something different. And I think a lot of that is because we're so early that we're really still paving the way in defining what exactly the Web3 space is or what it can become. And so I do want to ask you, like, what does being early on the blockchain mean to you?
To me, it means everything, because, like I've said, longevity wins. So the earlier you get into the space, the more you become, the market leader down the road. The more people turn to you, and it's not easy to understand. I do think that it's not something that that you could just tell somebody what it is and they get
Right.
it, because there's another component to it, which is actually believing and practicing, right? So unlike a lot of other things where it's like, oh, now I understand, okay, I'll do that. Um, it's not. It's so much more than that. Like, and I know, because of my own journey into the space, I had friends that were in the NFT world, and I understood what they were talking about, but it wasn't until I believed, what they were doing, and then kind of, I kind of joke that it's very religious, right? Like I have to be a
Mhm.
practicing religious person
Sure.
about it, and it's not, and it's not just about us. It's like how we are religious about what we're doing for the community, and how we do that. So to me, it's being early means everything, because you get through the understanding of how it all works, and then you can move it forward. It's really hard to to be innovative and be on the front lines just jumping into something. You have to be there and have kind of paid your dues and made the mistakes, and then figured it out. And then in order to kind of leapfrog where everybody else is, there has to be that kind of not only deep understanding, but the deep practice, where you have to be so vested in it emotionally and physically that you can then take that leap into the future.
Yeah, I really enjoy how you said you have to be religious and essentially be an active you have to practice this, every single day. So something that we like to do on this show is leverage the opportunity, because it is all love here in the blockchain,
Wag
waggle
me
vibes
vibes.
and all of those sorts of things. But if you're like us, sometimes you see things that, don't exactly sit right with you. And so we like to highlight a segment that we call beefing on the blockchain. And so Is there a project, a person, or just a pet peeve that you have on the blockchain, something that you see that just doesn't sit right with you that you'd like to highlight?
Um, the only thing that I think is that we need to be a lot more self-regulating in the way that, there's always going to be bad actors and people that want to take advantage, and because it's such an embracing community that everybody wants to feel like they want to embrace everybody that's in there. It's hard to it's hard to be fully embraced in that way, and we see it so many times where whether it's creators that are rugging their fans on the projects, or it's just so many people trying to steal your wallet and all that kind of stuff. And that's the part that's really tough, is that when you're trying to build a business, but yet there's so many people out there that are just trying to take advantage or destroy it, it actually hurts the innovation. It turns people off. And so to me, that's the part that's really, really hard to do. So I just think people need to be cautious about that stuff. I mean, people are, but like we're trying so hard to not ask people to hook up their wallets to things and to
Right.
ask them for stuff. We're just trying to be very, very cautious about that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Um, are you at all still involved in any of the other businesses, or are you 100% focused on HeroMaker Studios?
Yeah, I'm 100% HeroMaker. It's all I live, breathe, eat, and talk about. My company, Ace, the Comic-Con business, my brother runs that. I'm still the chairman of the company. So I still have an interest in that company. So wherever I'm helpful there is great. And it still kind of gives me a good kind of view into that world and what's going on, in real life world. But right now, I'm 100% on HeroMaker.
That's awesome. Did you have any plans at all, or have you talked about some sort of like collaboration with Comic-Con? Is that something that you've talked to your brother about?
No, we're thinking about in real life stuff very, very differently. Um,
Nice.
I think a lot of people keep thinking about in real life, whether it's conference based and things like that. And I'm working on developing potentially a um, you know again, it's going to take a long time to develop kind of the in real life stuff that's going to be compelling for people. But I have a lot of ideas. Obviously, there'll be lots of parties down the road
Sure.
for what we're doing.
Absolutely. And so I know we're kind of like nearing the last quarter of our show here. To be totally transparent, I had heard about you guys through the Nifty Alpha and, of course, in my buddy here, Hofstra. But I didn't really dive in and do the level of research that I had until the week leading up to our show today. If you had to kind of give us like your elevator pitch, or maybe like the top 3 or 4 things that someone should know about Kumite, what would you tell them?
The thing that I would want to tell them is one is that we're here for the long term, and that is it's not a project that people are going to come into and say, oh, I need to flip it and we're going to make a profit next week. It's first and foremost about engagement, and the more you engage, the more value you can create.
Mhm.
So that's number one. Number two, we want to have fun, and we want you to have fun. So, this is not about, again, how you're going to just take advantage of mechanical things. This is all about, how you can have fun participating and being a part of it. And then the third part is that everything about what we're doing is about becoming the hero of your own journey. So we're
Nice.
going to make sure that everything about what we do caters to you and what your interest is in terms of where you want to be down the road, right? So every character that whether it's Kumite or the next IP that we launch, that character that you own, that you have the NFT of, that is who you are, and that's how you define yourself whether it's your alter ego or an extension of yourself, and that we're going to give you the tools and the way in which you could just keep building that character to be ultimately you in the metaverse. So those are kind of the core things. We have a very, very long roadmap ahead of us to keep creating, some of the coolest tools for people to just keep doing that. We already have a swap engine. We just launched our meme maker, and we've got dozens and dozens more apps that we're going to be building out for people to leverage, their characters.
Yeah, I was just pulling up the Kumite OpenSea right here, looking through some of this really sweet art.
Oh yeah, that cool
Your
stuff.
art director is Clark Huggins. I would imagine, being in this comic book space as long as you were, you've developed some really good relationships with, some pretty high level artists. What's Clark Huggins' background for maybe people that aren't familiar with the comic space? Is he a pretty well known guy?
Yeah. So Clark is to me one of and again, may not be from a name standpoint like a Jim Lee, but I think he's got one of the most definitive backgrounds, in the character business. He created something called Reckless Deck, and Reckless Deck is basically a paper-based game that's an avatar builder. And he built that, and we acquired the company. We acquired Reckless Deck. So when we wanted to create the avatar maker for all of our character franchises, Clark was instrumental in that. So it's a paper-based game that people can pick a character, an element, a weapon, a costume from lots and lots of different categories to pick, the character that they want to create. So we're going to be doing a lot with that, and that's why Clark was more important, because again, it wasn't about, oh, how can you draw a character? It's how do you world build, and everything about the people that we're working with, it's about world building. And Clark is I think one of the foremost masters in the world on character and world building.
So I was trying to pull up the most rare Kumite. Do you know off the top of your head what's like the number one most sought after NFT?
Yeah, in the collection, each family of characters, there's 400 of each. So basically, Kumite is like a collection of 24 different families of 400 characters in each. In each of the families, we created a unique one-of-one assassin and a one-of-one healer. So each family has a healer and an assassin. So there's a goblin healer, goblin assassin, an angel healer, an angel assassin. And those are very, very, very popular. And those have traded in the 5 to 10 ETH already.
Oh, wow. Very nice.
Yeah. When I was at NFT NYC, I believe that's when, I don't know, I think it was the reveal happened. And I ended up getting a pretty rare one. And I guess I didn't really know. And so I put it up for, I don't know, 1.5 ETH or something like that, not thinking anything. And it was scooped like within 30 seconds. And I was like, what just happened? And so I went and bought 3 more. I tried to find the most rare ones. So I'm still holding the 3 that I have. But now I'm kind of kicking myself. I'm like, should I have just kept that,
Yeah, those are going to play an important role in the story. So, from our perspective, we kind of just dropped them out into the collection there. And, so we've got a lot more kind of stuff planned for people, a lot of Easter eggs out there, in future collections. And that's the beauty of what telling stories does.
Yeah.
As we tell stories and as those characters appear in the stories, those NFTs could be worth could go up in value a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Garibin, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but if you think about the state of the market, something that I've kind of shifted is, rather than just investing in projects because I feel like I like them and their prospect, I like to invest in people. And after talking with you today and getting to learn more about Kumite and your team, I'm really fond of the project. So I do have to ask you, I'm planning to get in. Which of these families do you think screams Sticky Finger Jones here?
So I'm only going to go by what we're seeing in the engagement side of things.
Okay.
But that's going to change over time. So when you think about there's 400 characters in each family. The ones that have kind of migrated to the top is all my fans out there on Twitter think I'm going to say the Faeries first.
Yeah, that's what he says.
That's what I.
But they're saying that. But the Goblins have really kind of formed an incredible alliances amongst themselves, and and their natural enemy is the Faeries. So that's one, and then I also think that the Steampunks, are really, really popular. So like the floor on those characters are sometimes are 2 or 3 times the floor on some of the other characters, so that when you want to get in, there's just not a lot of them out there for sale. So those are kind of the main categories, the main families that people are seeking right now. But what's going to happen is
I got a steampunk right here.
Oh yeah, you're in great shape then. Yeah. There's going to be you're going to do
It kind of looks like you too, Hofstra. Oh,
yeah, I got that guy. I got let's see, the Witches family.
I love the Witches too. The Witches are really cool looking.
And then I got my last one here.
Let's see.
This one up is a Goblins. Hey,
I got what the heck are you holding out on me?
Yeah. You're doing great. That's a nice looking goblin too.
Yeah, that one definitely looks like you, Hofstra.
Yeah, he's probably a traitor though. He's probably a traitor.
That's funny. And you're getting some love in the chat there, Hofstra. How about that?
All right. I signed up for the thing on the Discord too, so I just I'm slowly making sure I'm following along. I'm checking all the announcements because I know it's a long term. When I was talking to you guys in the beginning, they were, you guys were saying just be in it for the long haul. And I've actually, like with Sticky, I've shifted. I probably have, I don't know, maybe 8 projects that I'm really invested in or less. Last year I had like 40. I had so many. It was like, oh, you can't even get into it. So at the beginning of the year, I just said, look, I'm gonna keep the projects that I want to be invested in. And my whole experience in the NFT space has changed because of that. It's just like I understand what community means. I understand what some of the stuff you're talking about, how your community is going to be invested. And I really would urge people that are new to find stuff that they resonate with and communities that they really enjoy being a part of, because it'll be a completely different experience than just trying to flip and make money.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. When people start buying comic books, right? It's all about, who are they interested in? I mean, certainly there's always going to be a financial component, to what could be valuable there. But so much about it is, what are the stories that resonate with you? And it's the same thing with sports. You could buy rookie cards, or you're a Yankee fan, you want to buy Yankees. There's a lot of different ways, that you can collect, because those people's stories resonate with you. It's going to be the same thing here. Not that you can't own a lot of different franchises, but we are definitely one where the more you engage, the more value you're going to create. So it's not, even though rarity is a component of it, and certainly we see that in a lot of other projects, rarity might be the only component about what people try to collect or the value that's driven there. For us, it's engagement, and over time the rarity becomes less important, because the more popular your character becomes, the more value you're creating for it, and it doesn't matter what the rarity might be.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And Mr. Garrett, we definitely want to be respectful of your time as we kind of come to the close of our show. So is there anything that we didn't ask you that we should have, or something that you wanted to highlight that we haven't got to quite yet?
Yeah, for me, I think it's just a matter of getting involved in the community. People can find us on Twitter at Kumite NFT, or they can find us on Discord. We have HeroMaker. They can find us on Discord. So we definitely recommend people joining us and joining those communities. And especially if they have different NFTs and they're part of different families, join. I mean, if you have a Goblin, sign up for their Twitter and join their crew. If you have a fairy, if you have an angel or a witch or a demon, we don't care. Like just get engaged, find out what's going on. And then also just, with all these projects, things take time, but I will tell you, you will not be disappointed with the kind of really freaking cool stuff we have got coming out. So I definitely recommend telling your friends about this and getting them involved.
Outstanding. And yeah, again, we have a number of different projects that range all over this space. And on top of that, their community and the community engagement, is all over the charts. I will say today, your community has shown out. I mean, they've been blowing up the chat, all positivity, a ton of support. So I do have to ask you, is there anything you want to say to the community before we go here?
Yeah, it's just that we love you guys. Whether I like the Goblins or I don't, which I don't, but whether I like them or not, I'm still cheering for them. And to me, anything that we can do to support our fans, to create the fun and excitement and really just support them in however we can, that's our goal out there. And we want them to know that when they're having fun, it means because we're having fun also. And and that's kind of the key to life here.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on. This has been a great chat, and hearing about the project and your background and everything you've got going on has been really, really cool to hear. That's about all I got. I just really want to say thank you. We appreciate it.
All right, good. Yeah, we just encourage people, tell your friends, get them involved, and and LFG here.
Absolutely, yes, sir. And again, like Hofstra said, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed the conversation. You make a great podcast guest. To everyone that is out there in the audience, I think, like Garrett said, the number one thing that you can do is tell a friend. Tell a friend about our show. Tell a friend about Kumite. The number two thing is check us out on Twitter. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe to us. Join their Discord. Until next time, I'm Sticky Finger Jones. We've got Hofstra here, and this is Gareb. It's Web3 DJs, the fastest 30 minutes of NFTs, crypto on the blockchain. Thanks again for joining us. We will see you on Wednesday. We've got a great guest lined up. It's Fiddy with Apocalyptic Apes. And again, just thank you so much, Mr. Gareb. It was great to meet you. Really enjoyed the show.
Thank you. Always fun.
All right. Until next time. Peace.
Thanks.